boys gonna bring you to your knees. Here comes the Western.
7:30 in Trinidad and Tobago. We're still asking you the question via Twitter, by the way, as to whether or not this success by the West Indies Cricket Board, sorry, the West Indies team, not the West Indies Cricket Board, signaled some sort of meaningful turnaround. By the way, they move away the six-pack case that they have for the Oktoberfest thing because they felt that I would take it myself just so I could pour it down the drain. But anyway, I'm not going to get involved in that. We're going to get into something a little different, which some say, you know, you need to be a little...
Sober conversation.
Sober conversation? Well, we'll find out. Because some will say you need to be a little inebriated to take the time to appreciate the politics of Trinidad and Tobago. But we are joined by the leader of the Congress of the People, Prakash, Ramadhar. Good morning to Mr. Ramadhar.
Good morning. Good to
have you on the program. Good to know that you're smiling because many people are dishing out a lot of licks on your party to suggest that, you know, basically that the COP, before we talk about the budget and so on, is now hopelessly compromised by its continuing association with this government, which is seen as basically UNC controlled, especially after the Section 34 matter.
Well, let me just say that's the view of some, and certainly not the persons who would have voted for the COP or for this partnership. They wish it to be so, but the COP has maintained itself from the very beginning, from its inception till now, on the principles that we were founded upon, and we seek to influence all those around us as we proceed day by day in the politics. That's the political reality. Change is never easy, but it does take effort, and those who are strong enough and have the willpower and to make Trinidad and Tobago a better place for our brothers and sisters will continue that effort and not give up and say that it's hopeless.
But are they taking you on, Mr. Ramadhar? When I say they, I'm talking about central government, because this is seen as a UNC-controlled government, because one of the fundamental platforms or pillars, couple of pillars on which the Congress of the People went into a general election as part of the partnership and has championed even before, would have been the issue of constitutional reform,
Absolutely.
the issues of term limits, the issues of right of recall. We're halfway into this term of office and we're not hearing anything about it.
Well, you just bowled me a full toss, I'm going to hit you for 6.
Okay, well,
very simply this. In fact, there is a note before the cabinet now that I am, as chairman of the Constitutional Reform Committee, we are going to launch the consultations within a few weeks throughout the country, and the very basics that we had promised in the manifesto of the very things you've spoken about will and must be delivered. And I had made a public pronouncement that document will be prepared by May of next year. So that is going to happen. It's a must do. It's a promise that we made and a promise we will fulfill.
Well, it seems as if you've miscued the full toss and it's gone straight up in the end. I'm about to take the catch because
okay, let's hope you'll drop it.
As you know very well, if we're going to go to the point of consultation and then a document will be presented next year, it seems to tie in very nicely to the next general election and the pretense that, you know, if you vote us in for another 5 years, we're going to deliver.
Not at all. The promise we made in the manifesto is for 5 years, the 5-year period, and we promise that to be delivered in this term. I have made a commitment to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It must be delivered in this term, and therefore you have just dropped the catch, because that is a must-do. I'm committed totally, and I'm all of Trinidad and Tobago.
And if it doesn't happen, Mr. Ramadhar, well, then by the next general election, it is not a reality.
Well, we'll have to look at the reasons for that. But I can't imagine any reason that it would not go to the Parliament to be voted on for constitutional amendment and change. And so, you know, let's wait and see.
Well, maybe the excuse might be you won't get PNM support, because if it requires support from the opposition.
No, let's face the reality. If they do not wish to support constitutional amendment, that will improve the very conduct of governance in the country, well, then that's a matter for them. We will do all that we can on our side. You know, we can't determine everything, the outcome of everything. All you could do is determine what you do. And if you do all that you could, and even more, and others frustrate, and we've seen their efforts to frustrate in the past, but we would imagine that the population will make them pay a very, very heavy price for that.
Some will say that this government is doomed to pay a heavy price at the next general election anyway because of Section 34.
People will say that, of course, but there's a larger number of people who will have that hope that we came in and the promises that we made, and I keep returning to that because at the end of the day, trust is about fulfilling promises. And if we are very fair to the People's Partnership Government, to the COP, all of our partners, and see what we had promised and what we are delivering in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the laptops for children, in terms of the Children's Life Fund, fundamental things that we have delivered already. So talk is cheap and talk is easy, especially from those who are your enemy, quote unquote, who wish to destroy you. They will pilfer your good name. Everything that you do is interpreted in the worst possible light. We expect that. That's the level of politics that we are in, and we have to live with that, but continue to work, not to be deterred. It is easy to be frustrated. I want to tell you, as a human being, as a person coming from private practice and private life, it is very, very difficult, because your best intent, your best actions are interpreted in the worst possible way and given as truth. We need to restore that confidence. I agree with you thoroughly. And the one way to do that is to live up to your word.
Has the confidence in this government, and by extension the Congress of the People, been irreversibly violated by the Section 34?
I would not say irreversible. It's not irreversibly damaged. The Section 34, let's make it quite clear. Every member, including myself,
well, that's a cop-out.
That is not a cop-out. That is not a cop-out. That is not a cop-out.
Because it's the proclamation of Section 34.
The proclamation would have come in any event, legitimately, in January. The early proclamation, and there's been a heavy and dear price paid, because, as you know, I made a call through my party. I apologize, of course, on my part.
But you said nothing in Parliament, Mr. Ramadhar. When this special sitting of Parliament took place, you didn't say anything. The Prime Minister didn't say anything.
And rightly so. Let me tell you, there were those who spoke. Not on everything you speak, but my party spoke voluminously and very powerfully. Released by Mr. Joe Tony, the chairman. That one of the strongest statements that one could make. I could have added nothing in the Parliament to that. We made a public call for the lifting of the veil of cabinet confidentiality. First time in the history of this nation that has been done. And a minister, I'm sorry, I mean personally for him, but where have you ever seen that before? That strengthens the democracy. The people made a call. Look, something went wrong here. We as a partner made a call, and the Prime Minister acted in a manner that we've not seen before. And that sets up precedent, and precedent sets a new standard as you proceed. Incrementally, we move to a new level of governance. That is what we hope for. That is what is happening before your very eyes.
But isn't it essentially because you have backed yourself into a corner, Mr. Ramadhar, prior to the, it's almost like you pick a side with only bowlers, and you need to score some runs, but you only have bowlers in your side. Because prior to the general election of May 24th, 2010, you stated very, very often that the Congress of the People will do nothing to jeopardize the partnership, and in essence you have faced your Waterloo already and lost.
No, that is your interpretation. That's the interpretation of some. Who determines my Waterloo? My Waterloo will come when I close my eyes and give up the spirit. I will never give up my fight for improving my country, and nor will my party. That's what we stand for, and others in the partnership are committed to the nation. We continue to do that. Interpretations and name calling and saying that you've met your Waterloo and back yourself in a corner, that is the interpretation of some. There are many others who see the benefit of this government, this people's partnership, and continue to wish and hope that we continue to hold together strong and to continue to improve. I've been through this country for the last 2 weeks meeting membership of the COP. It is surprising and pleasantly so, notwithstanding a lot of angst for some of the things that have gone wrong, some of the disappointment. They are saying, look, stick together, make this thing work, stick it out. I don't make decisions only from what I believe. I go to my membership, and Joe Tony and I, the chairman, have been going through the country for the last couple of weeks, and this is what they're telling us. That there is, because the people, you know, this country is not Port of Spain alone. This country is all of Trinidad and Tobago. And when you go into the countryside, outside of Port of Spain, you hear the real feelings of the people. Things you see where people have never had water in their lives, or roads, they're getting that. Healthcare, they're improving the health centers. You name it, dramatic improvements on the outskirts. And I think we need to really see what is happening in the country generally, and not just take a myopic view of the politics at one level, but the reality of the people. This local government minister, this new one. Right, Mr. Dr. Ramadhar. It is incredible the sort of work he has been able to achieve in a very short period of time. In St. Augustine, so much has been done in the last couple of months, and I'm hearing this from all over. So these are the things that the people want. It is important, of course, at that level, the Section 34 issues. That is a governance issue that we cannot turn a blind eye to, but there has been a serious consequence to that failure. And we move towards that. So all and every minister, each and every one of us must know that if you do wrong, you're under a microscope, and you will pay a price for it. That is the basic rule of any legitimate society. You do wrong, there's a consequence. In the past, that was never so. You do wrong, and you became a hero. You became untouchable. That has changed already. And thank God for men like you, who continue to criticize, yes, sometimes whether we earn it or otherwise, but to keep us on you know, under the glare, which is a critically important thing.
And we will come back to that in a moment, but is it correct to say that the Congress of the People is completely happy with the budget as was presented by the Finance Minister Larry Hawaii on Monday?
Well, let me just say, nobody could be, if you're completely happy, you're in a state of insanity. There's nothing that is perfect in this world. I don't like a deficit budget, but when you understand what are the consequences of not having a deficit budget, would it mean that when workers call for wage negotiation settlement at a certain level, and they're entitled to, because after all, as a father, you will know you have to look after your children and your family, and they make their demands. Is it that this government is saying, no, wage freeze, lay off people because the public sector is too large? Are we going to say that? And then if we only deal with that aspect and deal with the recurrent expenditure, are we going to say that the economy should not be stimulated? There's a balance. You need to be able to look after the people's immediate and future needs. But the future needs come in now to the stimulation of the economy. And if you don't do both, what do you do? And that is the challenge that we were met with. When the wastage of the last regime, many spoke out, but many others did not speak out, and they are now speaking out. And that is when you needed to do things to have created a new economy that is sustainable into the long term. And not just have, and I do not, this Congress of people do not believe in having persons dependent on government jobs. What that does, it takes away a right to democratic free thought. That you believe that you have to vote in a certain way, otherwise you will lose your job. That is a terrible thing in this world. And therefore, we congratulate this budget to say that there must be an element of training for the private industry, private sector, to get tax breaks and so to hire people out of CPEP and URP. That is a fundamental change that the COP has been standing for before we came into government, and we continue, and it is happening before our very eyes. That is a serious change in policy.
It might be a serious change in policy, but in practice, the reality is that this government stands accused of doing exactly what the PNM did in fueling a state of dependency.
And who is making that accusation?
Well, let the opposition and other impartial observers are saying, look, you had the whole Project Orange and thing that ended up with big stone pelting in Hilton. You had almost the institutionalization of CPEP and URP.
Let me pause. I hear you. I agree with you to an extent. But do you believe that a society, it's like a supertanker, not like a Porsche or Ferrari that you could stop on a dime. The ship of state had been put into set on a course, and to change that requires time and diligent effort.
Is this government really changing the course?
Of course we are. The very budget statement criticized as the worst budget ever. Really? Let us see. I mean, I don't want to go into...
I mean, ignore the hyperbole. Right? Ignore that.
We could ignore that, but apparently it feeds into a hysteria that make it real without looking at the facts and the details of the budget. When you have a budget that says, look, we have a shortage of housing, we cannot rely on state provision of this, so you let private land developers and commercial developers do it by tax breaks. That is innovative, that is real, and it happened before. It happened in the last the administration from 95 onwards.
Yes.
And we saw the economy pick up. Right, there was a blast when oil was $9, if I recall.
Yes, it was.
And then, of course, you know what happened when this government was handed over on moral and spiritual values, and we saw the demolition of the hopes of the people for that last 8 years or so. Now, do we say, you talk about economy orange, there are demands, people are hungry, they have children to feed. What do you do? Do you say cut off all the social welfare programs immediately? Or do you have a transition period? You have to feed people people eat every day. I at least require minimum 3 meals per day. Like every child, mother, father. Do you just stop it? Or do you do that and yet at the same time create that new environment as the supertanker starts turning slowly to training to higher levels? We have brilliant, genius people here. But somehow or the other, the politics of the last generation or two required that belief that we were not good enough, and you require the bare minimum to survive, and if you don't have it, that's the end of you, and if I am not in government, you're not going to get it. That fear and scare kind of tactic, that is something that we in the COP and the partnership trying to get rid of.
But that doesn't appear to be the case. If you hear about the accusations and the evidence that suggests nepotism and favoritism in the various state boards and so on, where there's talk of commissions of, not commissions, but integrity commission getting involved. It just seems to be
and that is I love this. I love this. This is a new enlightenment. You
think the new enlightenment to find out that they thief in the same way?
And that is important when we all know what had happened in the past, but nobody spoke out against it. Listen, I take a very philosophical and long-term view. That's how I take a very philosophical and long-term view. These are necessary things. Where wrong is done, that there must be consequences. Let's deal with that. In the past, you think that was really so?
But what
changed? What has changed? The new expectation of what we said we would promise, and it is happening before our very eyes.
Are you basically trying to say, Mr. Ramadhar, that in comparison to the PNM philosophy of teething and staying quiet about it, it is okay that this bunch teeth in and get in court?
No, don't ever utter that in my presence. I do not believe that you could steal and not be caught if you believe in universal laws. Like yourself, I know, chapter 17 of the Quran deals with that. What you sow, you shall reap. There is no getting away from that, you know. And
well, at least covering it up.
No, you could cover it up at one level, but you pay that price. And I live and believe that, truly believe that. I've seen it happen over and over. So don't suggest for a moment that this issue of teething and covering up. That is not policy of government. There are people who will do wrong things in any organization. That does not mean that the leadership will condone that. Wherever there is an element of that, it will be dealt with.
But it appears that it's only responded to when it's exposed.
Well, if you don't know about it.
Well, if you're a central government, if you've got your various agencies, are you suggesting that it's only when the media or some opposition politician highlights something, Mr. Ramadhar, that the government responds?
No, I will never suggest that. But if information doesn't come for you, and this is, I mean, that's why I celebrate the media. See, people may criticize it. Sometimes I was hit a terrible blow a couple of weeks ago by front page of a newspaper on a story that had no merit whatsoever. But you take that. But you see, and that's why you have to be careful about crying wolf every day. Because sometimes the truth will pass you straight in an environment of noise. You wouldn't hear it. So it is important, and I think that the machinery that is necessary in the new procurement legislation to bring those things forward without having to go to the media, which makes it simple. We know in Trinidad, people are afraid at all levels. They're afraid to talk, but it's easy to whisper something to get a newspaper reporter, and then they do the investigation. So that is the way, that is the price of democracy is eternal vigilance. And that is why this is a partnership really with the media, people not realizing what is happening. A media that is proactive is unnecessary in any democratic society. And that if wrongdoing comes about as a result of things in the media, so be it. Otherwise, it would have gone quietly and nobody would have known. Until the new systems come in. Remember, this is, I'm making no excuse, because we have been in office for 2 years plus. And the changes that are necessary, we have to go through a churning, a legislative change, a procurement development, and a new concept of how we do business. So that you don't just come in and everything changes overnight. That was my hope and wish, but it doesn't happen that way.
Mr. Ramadhar, we just have just over 60 seconds left. The time has gone by very, very quickly before we could even get into so many other things. But I had to ask you this question. In the same way that the local government election, the THE elections in January is being seen as a referendum of sorts for this government, is the executive elections of the COP in a few weeks' time a referendum on your leadership of the COP?
I hardly imagine that. It is part of a natural process of the change of executive. It's not a referendum because if anybody steps back and looks at what has happened since I took leadership, dramatic changes have come. The party has been more empowered, contrary to what people will want to see. We are the enemy of all. Everybody wants to see the back of the COP because we are troublemakers, quote unquote.
Even the UNC?
I could only imagine, because you see the kind of statements that the party has made, strong and powerful statements against sometimes the government itself. That is a democracy. That is the COP. Never giving up its identity. Standing firm, but working together. Never to break. Always to build.
Mr. Ramadhar, always good to get your perspective. Thanks very much for coming in to share your views. Sorry we didn't have more time to develop on some of those points, but you'll come back again. We'll play a super over that time around and see who gets hit for 6 this time around. Good to get your perspective as always. Prakash Ramadhar, Legal Affairs Minister and Member of Parliament for St. Augustine, and indeed the leader of the Congress of the People. Don't worry, he's not going to lose his seat in the next few weeks. His election comes up in a year's time. That's still to come.
I will not lose it.
And he's obviously confident. When we come back, a quick focus again on the West Indies triumph in the World T20. We'll be back.